I grew up in a house where our bookshelf was always had spiritual books on it. Everything. I think I was reading Liz Green in school holidays when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And there were full esoteric libraries, stuff from the Lucas Trust, all of that. I was a latchkey kid, so during the school holidays and stuff, it was generally me home by myself.
I was just wondering, I'm fascinated by Chiron, so I was wondering if it sounds like a lot of the other aspects of Chiron on a mythological level came in here, like the teacher, the philosopher, um, actually the head teacher, because he was sought after by the gods. And so I was wondering if that feels like the other aspects of Chiron, not just as the wounded healer, but as the philosopher, teacher, um, like you said, the leader of the teams and everything kind of comes into there too.
Oh, so a friend of mine in esoterics, he talks about Aquarian architects, and your chart to me just screams that. And Aquarian architects are here to help bust the Piscean structure by building architecture for the new age that's going to take at least 2,000 years to fully come through, right?
Bit of
Right.
being erratic,
Yeah.
and that interfering with your goals and what you're putting out there in the world, which again with your Taurus rising, that's not what comes across at all. So that's obviously an internal processing.
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe that Neptune in your seventh house, is in Sagittarius. It's really close to the Jupiter and the Mars, and then like there's the Venus and the Mercury, and then the Sun in the North Node, and then the Chiron, and it comes on around. But it kind of looks to me like in this chart, like that Neptune is kind of pushing all of that, to help you evolve. And Neptune is the planet. I relate it to like the mystical, like the Magician card.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another Modern Astrology chart reading group. We're sort of flying by the seat of our pants today. We actually had a guest lined up, but things have sort of taken an unexpected turn and our guest hasn't turned up. So we're just going to go with a different chart this time. I am going to switch screens right now. How's that? Can we see that? Are we still looking
There
at
we go.
Nope.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay, so we're just doing a blind reading today. This is my chart. So like we normally do, I thought maybe we could just sound off, introduce ourselves. My name's Damian McKinnon. As you can see, I'm an Aquarius sun, a Leo moon, and a Taurus ascendant. I'm based in Brisbane, Australia.
I'm Michael Pruitt. I am an Aquarius sun, Libra moon, Libra rising, and I'm in Noonan, Georgia, USA.
Hi, I'm Rowan. I'm a Leo sun, a Taurus moon, and Aquarius ascendant. I'm in New Mexico.
I'm Brandy. I'm a Capricorn Sun, Gemini Moon, Virgo Rising, and I'm in West Norriton, Pennsylvania, not too far from Philly.
Awesome.
John?
Got me? Okay. My name is John. I'm in Texas, and I'm a Capricorn Sun, Taurus Moon, Pisces Rising. I think I said what I was supposed to say.
I think you're an Aries rising, a Taurus moon, and a Capricorn sun.
Mhm. Well, I was going by the uneven houses.
Right.
Okay,
The Placidus.
okay.
Okay, cool. All right. I think Denise is in ninja mode right now. Well, look, I normally host these things, but since it's my chart, I think Michael and you're going to drive today. How does that sound? Are you up for it?
Okay,
You're the boss.
okay.
I call you the boss all the time. Today, you literally are. So you're going to be running the show. How does that sound? No
Awesome.
pressure.
No. All right. So has everybody introduced themselves? I don't know where Denise is. And
Yep.
I can't remember her placements, but all right. So here we have Damian McKinnon. He was born on February the 10th, 1971 in New Zealand. That's Generation X. It looks like he is a Taurus rising. It looks like he's got an Aquarius sun in the ninth house sitting really, really closely to his North Node. And like I said, it's Aquarius. Um, His moon is down there in the third house. That's in Leo, sitting next to his south node. And with a Taurus rising, it looks like he's gonna his chart ruler is gonna be Venus, I believe. So I would now at this point I would go look to see where Venus is over there in the eighth house in is that Capricorn?
Capricorn. Yeah.
Very, very close to Mercury, which is in Aquarius. So it looks like I guess at this point I would also go and look at the Chiron and it's in the 10th house. And I guess I would just kind of ask you to just kind of give me a breakdown of maybe how you resonate with your sun sign being in that ninth house. You know, the ninth house is the house of spirituality, with the north node sitting very closely and it being Aquarius. I'm really curious how that's playing out in your life, in your daily life. Well, in your life from childhood on to now, actually.
Yeah. I grew up in a house where our bookshelf was always had spiritual books on it. Everything. I think I was reading Liz Green in school holidays when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And there were full esoteric libraries, stuff from the Lucas Trust, all of that. I was a latchkey kid, so during the school holidays and stuff, it was generally me home by myself. And we lived quite far from the center of the city. So, I spent a lot of time by myself, which for an Aquarius it's just heaven. You've got everything
and
you
pretty
need within reach, and things like that. So, I definitely resonate with the Aquarius side of the chart. I think I'd have trouble hiding it probably more than anything. So I've always sort of been the upstart, the rebel, the agitator, the rabble rouser. Yeah. So
all right.
definitely.
So are you saying that because in the ninth house, that sun and that north node. So the north node is kind of what we're here to do in this lifetime. So it's kind of like it kind of sounds like that was going to be your destiny all along. Does that make
I
sense?
think so. I think also too, I've never been able to really connect with the 9 to 5 world, and I think that Chiron's probably got a lot to do with that. That's really emphasized that ninth house in my life. To me, everything is spirituality to a degree, and when I say that, I'm not talking about the meditative spirituality. I'm talking that the universe, everything in it, everything we do, everything is bigger than we are, and we're part of a bigger whole that's operating all the time. I find probably more than anything, and maybe it's Aquarius, I find the day-to-day stuff, the mundane stuff, the hardest part. We were talking about it the other day. For me, crisis times, I'm made for those. When things are tough, when things are challenging, when there's things that are happening that people don't understand, I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for hacks. I'm looking for ways through it. It's the peace that gets me. I struggle with the peace, the world in peace. And I think for me, the world's big, it's dynamic, and there's spirituality. It's bigger than all of us. And I believe in past lives. I think I have since, the moment I was born. It's always something that's been really, really strong in my life. And I think we're all constantly evolving spiritually, which leaves all the room in the universe, just as a caveat, for us to be the absolute shits that human beings can be. I think it's all part of the spiritual process. You know what I mean? So I don't think spirituality as a brand ensures that everybody's good by nature. And I don't think we're supposed to be necessarily, if that's not what our journey is designed to be. But I think we're all the best versions of ourselves at a given time we know how to be. So, So
it looks like maybe that Neptune in your seventh house is in Sagittarius. It's really close to the Jupiter and the Mars, and then like there's the Venus and the Mercury, and then the Sun and the North Node, and then the Chiron, and it comes on around. But it kind of looks to me like in this chart, like that Neptune is kind of pushing all of that, to help you evolve. And Neptune is the planet. I relate it to like the mystical, like the Magician card.
Sure.
You have all the tools that you need. And then Jupiter, of course, being the largest planet, it expands everything. It's the lucky planet, right? Does anybody else have anything? That's a stellium, correct? In the seventh house.
Yeah, that's a stellium.
Yeah. So that totally jumps out at me. How's that played out?
I think looking at that Aquarius sun in the ninth house, in another lifetime, maybe 100 or 1,000 years ago, I could easily have been the hermit on a mountain. I don't really need people in a lot of ways. And I don't mean that in a negative context. I see people who live to be around other people. I couldn't be more the opposite of that if I tried. I think if relationships weren't a part of my life, I probably would not stay in one place for long. Would not build connections with people. And I think that's what's grounded me more than anything. And without a doubt, I don't think anything has destroyed more of my illusions about myself or the way the world works than relationships. You know, when you're up against, with somebody else, against somebody else, and you're in that proximity, and then, you know, you're constantly having a compromise, which I'm not good at. So, and I think relationships for me have been a boiler house for or more a pressure cooker, I think, for growth and change than anything. Yeah.
So that's that Mars energy right there playing out really close
And
to
Jupiter,
that
I've always been lucky with relationships. You know, not always that. I've never attracted easy people. People who are easy to be around, but I know for a fact I'm a handful. I can be a real problem for somebody as well. So I don't think easy people are gonna work for me. You know
it's funny that you're, and you know, it's funny. I just happen to know that your wife's a Sagittarius, and this is all, you know, in your seventh house of Sagittarius. So that's pretty.
All the pushback you could ever need in one compact little package. So
right.
You know,
that's perfect.
And she's a fighter if she needs to be. So she's more than qualified for the job. I think. You know, yeah.
So would you say that your relationships then have your relationships actually throughout your life have kind of shaped who you are today? Is that what you're kind of saying is, and all of your relationships haven't been like hunky-dory, obviously, because I see Mars and that's like a super, you know, that 11 breaks down to 2. So, you know, in numerology. So I see the Mars sitting right there in the middle. So I know that there's been some, you know, some rough times, but you know, Jupiter does signify good luck. So
yeah,
I'm just wondering
I've always been lucky with the people that I've been with. But I think generally for most relationships I've had, I know how it's going to end, or at least I have an idea in my head. And once I've got that idea is born, I think I know it's just a matter of time. I just did a podcast. That sounds probably more mercenary than it really is, but I think it's probably more Sagittarian than anything. I'm there to learn something, and when that lesson's learned or that job's done, I move on. And so I think that's a lot of that's tied into other stuff. It's like I said, I just did a podcast and we had a look at this kind of early trauma stuff, I guess. And for me, a lot of the early experiences I had in life made it difficult for me to trust or build connections with other people. So I have never stayed in one place for long. I've never really built connections with people. And when I move, I cut everything behind. That's been the pattern all my life. It's only been the last 20 years I've really started turning that around. And they've been 20 great years, you know, I'm grateful for them. So, but I think all the experiences I had before that, I think it was really like a speed learning class in the form of a speed dating session. So, yeah. I don't know, but does anybody else see anything in that pattern? Or have any questions?
You were born at an eclipse.
Okay. So what's your takeaway on that? What are your thoughts on that? How would that express?
Well, how do you feel like that added to or played into like who you are?
I think I never really I've never really connected with people. I think that's been the earliest thing. Then that started from a very, very early age. I've never understood it. You know, I went to this session last night for accountants, and they were talking about this communication model for more effective communication within a workplace. You know, and this lady was presenting it. It was her bread and butter business. This is what she did. She was a HR expert, and nobody needs to learn people skills more than accountants or IT. They're the two departments, you know, that really need that. And I was listening to all of these things, I'm watching all of this, and I'm thinking, you know, and there's types that live outside this model. They're not part of this model. And what's driving this communication between these four quadrants that they were presented was a belief that people should be around each other and people should be coexisting together. And I've never felt that. You know, and it's interesting, when I looked at this quadrant presented, what I did was I divided up into my own quadrants and decided this is where these signs belong. It ended up becoming a model for, you know, astrology more than anything. But I think probably that eclipse for me is just, there's never been a desire to maintain long-term connections with people. Things turned around for me when I had my daughter, and, you know, and things like that. And I suddenly could not move anymore. You know, and my own childhood, my parents split up quite early, and my parents struggled with each other for, you know, for their entire adult lives, you know, with the aftermath of that. And it really played out on me and my sister, who we don't even speak to each other. She's the same as me. We just don't build connections with people. And I think that eclipse has probably got everything to do with that. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. So it's a really interesting point you raised there, Brandy. I've never really thought about that. Does that sound right? Would that conform in how you think that might express?
Would it being in the third house? Yeah, communication, and then the south node there.
That's where you think it might play out in communication? Yeah. I think communication for me has been probably the strongest tool I've ever developed. And it was interesting, again, when we were talking in that session last night, and we were sort of on the debrief afterwards. I did the Myers-Briggs test when I did management training down in Sydney, and I came up as a hardcore introvert, right up in the very, very far end of the spectrum. And I remember it scared the hell out of my boss, because in my office, I was probably the most social person there was. So I can simulate, or I can take on, I've developed the skills to communicate with people and things like that, but that's not my natural calling. So I can be in a workplace, I can work around other people, I can communicate. I can build trust with somebody and have a full conversation for an hour, and they won't learn a thing about me. And that's all through communication. So, you know, but by the end of the hour, you know, they'll give you their phone number or want to get together for lunch or something like that, and they know nothing about you. So that's probably how that expresses for me. Communication's been the best tool I've had to. Otherwise, I think life would be impossible, you know, in a lot of other ways. Either that, or I'd be that hermit living up in that cave up on a hill somewhere, you know. Yeah. And that's probably the Leo. I think probably every stupid thing I ever did when I was young was that bombastic Leo moon. Got me into more trouble more than anything. One of the things it's done is it's got me into roles that I probably should not have, or was not qualified to have, or emotionally developed enough to be. You know, got me into leadership positions and things like that. Sorry about this. I'm going to turn that off. Gosh. So, you know, that Leo energy, I think, really thrived on that. Maybe that's old energy coming through that needs to be refined in this lifetime. You know, knowing when to stop talking, knowing when to stop taking charge. Things like that. Yeah.
It's an interesting interpretation with the moon and the south node. But I think that Mercury, that Mercury in Aquarius helps a lot with communication style. Don't you?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you. Don't you think that Mercury
sure.
in Aquarius helps a lot? Yeah, especially in the 8th house. It's, you know, it's almost in the 9th house, so it's very close to that sun as well.
Yeah. I think also probably that 8th house stuff. You can learn a lot about a person just by looking at them, how they sit, how they carry themselves, the words they use, the words they don't use, things like that. You know, you learn more about a person by listening than talking, I think. You know, so, and I think that for me is what communication is. It's intelligent questions rather than that need. I think some people have to talk about themselves all the time. you know, in here I'm doing the complete opposite of that. So far
Well, you're
I've
the
done a
star.
good job at that, but yeah, I'm more interested in other people than I am about myself, I guess, in that regard. Yeah.
So I wonder if that would be the eighth house, your eighth house influence with Venus and Mercury, the fact that you're more interested in other people, you know, because you are good at asking questions and active listening and really making, you know, good conversation. And maybe it's that, I'm assuming it's that Venus and that Mercury in that eighth house. Because the eighth house always throws me a little bit because I know it's like the house of, I always see it as a house of other people's money, but I know it's also like we talked about this last when we did Denise's chart, um, like the house of occult, the occult. Isn't that right? Isn't that, but then that kind of throws me a little bit always because I know the occult just means hidden things, but it sounds so much more, you know, nefarious, like the occult. So I always have difficulty like interpreting the planets in the eighth house, or not so much interpreting them. I have a difficulty kind of figuring out how the energy manifests because
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not really clear on the eighth. I'm very clear on every other house, but that eighth house just always throws me in a natal chart. I guess I'm just afraid of it. I'm afraid to approach it. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's the house of Scorpio, right? So it's the hidden stuff. It's the stuff you don't talk about. You know, it's like sex and it's just, you know, other people's money. So it always just makes me really nervous, but I don't ever really know how to approach that.
It's the embodiment of Pluto in the chart and the houses, I think. So, which for me helps quite a bit. And it's the house of the hidden, and it's different hidden to what's in the 12th house. The 12th house tends to be a lot more internal.
So since you have Venus as your chart ruler and Venus is in your eighth house, which is in this case it's Capricorn. Is that Capricorn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Venus in Capricorn should in theory be playing like a big role in your life, correct? Because it's the when we look at the natal chart, you know, the the planet that rules the ascendant is like the helm of the ship, so to speak. So it kind of has a lot of meaning in the chart because it is the ruler of the first house. So that's where I'm trying. And so I keep coming back to the Venus. You know, obviously there's a stellium right before that Venus, so that's all pushing up, and then it's pushing into the Venus and pushing into the Mercury, and then the Sun, and then you see that North Node, which is literally what you're here to do in this lifetime, and it's literally in the ninth house, which tells us that, you know, it's something to do with spirituality, higher learning. You're, you know, you're a teacher, so we all know that that fits perfectly. So it looks to me like you're on the, I mean, you're on the correct path. I mean, textbook. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does. It feels like it.
You have that Chiron in the 10th house, and it's in Aries, so that's the expectation of pain. And the 10th house is the house of career. So how has that energy played out? Is that something that you dealt with at an earlier age? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that you're happy with your career now, right?
For me, career is it's had the same patterns. Generally, I'll go into a job, a role in industry, and I'll rise up pretty quick. I think that Leo stuff down in the third house somehow manages to push me right up to the top. And then I don't like it there and I move on. That's generally it. And I'll let the industry go. I've worked in different industries. I've worked in human services. I've worked in counseling capacity before. I've worked in the sales industry. I've worked in IT for a bunch of years. I did well in all of them, and then just restless. I just moved on. I'm not good at one thing that always really annoyed me about work is it should really be quite simple. We all know what we're there to do. You know, the job description's written out clearly for you, so there's no real room for misinterpretation. But then you go along and you've got all these petty politics and all this human stuff that just tends to suck the air out of almost every role I've ever been in, and I just don't have the stomach for it. And I'm not a people pleaser. I'm not good with management, so the Aquarius really plays out there. I'm rebellious in that regard, and then when I've had enough, generally I move on. So either that, or I like the last role I had. I was working in the human services. Ended up being the site manager in the space of about a year and a half, I think. You know, from a frontline position, and then just there were no challenges left after that. I moved on. I work for myself now. This is all part of what I do. So, and I think that way that just diffuses that for me, if that makes sense. So yeah, careers, I've never regretted living that way and thinking that way. But I look back and there were so many other possibilities that I could have taken on. There's so many other things I can do, but it just feels like an egregious waste of time to give so much of your life to other people, to making other people wealthy and to making their dreams come true and all of that sort of stuff. And that really grates probably on my Aquarius more than anything, and probably my Taurus ascendant too. You know, it just seems like too much effort to benefit somebody else. But yeah, that part of me really rails against that. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, go for it, Rowan.
I was just wondering, I'm fascinated by Chiron, so I was wondering if it sounds like a lot of the other aspects of Chiron on a mythological level came in here, like the teacher, the philosopher, actually the head teacher, because he was sought after by the gods. And so I was wondering if that feels like the other aspects of Chiron, not just as the wounded healer, but as the philosopher, teacher, like you said, the leader of the teams and everything kind of comes into there too.
That's a really interesting take, actually. One of the things about Chiron mythologically was he couldn't heal himself. So maybe just by working with other people, I'm figuring stuff out. That's a really interesting take. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense when I think about it that way. Yeah. And again, too, you've got those trines running back to the 7th house too. So I guess that's being in relationships and stuff like that. That's the best teachers I've always had have been the partners that I've had, because they always push back, or they always find stuff about yourself that you never see in yourself and things like that. And maybe that's had such an impact on that Chiron, you know. I don't think I'd do the work based on my own interests or my own values. It'd have to be something else at stake, somebody else involved to do that. So yeah, I think that sounds right, Rowan. That sounds really interesting. That's a really good takeaway.
Yeah, that's super cool. I like that a lot. I think that's very insightful and very creative. It's a very good interpretation of Chiron. But yeah, and it's cool how it does go down to the trines, to that 7th house where you have the stellium. So it's so neat. I like that. So what about Saturn in the 12th house? That's Taurus at 16 degrees. It's also, is it making any aspects? Is it making a square to the sun?
It's part of a T-square, I think.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Going up to the sun,
The sun
going
and
down
the
to the
moon.
moon. So yeah, it's a bucket chart as well. So that's the handle of the bucket, because Chiron's an asteroid, you wouldn't impact that. So basically, and that's doesn't matter what I do in my life, everything seems to lead back to Saturn. And in the 12th house, it's like this, I think I've said it before, it's like living by a set of rules that are very, very strict, but nobody tells you what they are. You just know what they are when the rules get broken. So, you know, the impact of that is, you know, you get whatever karmic lesson or whatever repercussions happen straight away. And that's been a really frustrating pattern. It's also taken me a long time to learn that, for me, I think that's a really karmic placement, that when things are bad or things are desperate, you will always be lifted up as well, because it feels like you're there to learn those lessons and stuff. And if you're distracted by other things, even bad things, when they come along, something always protects me. I always feel lucky as well. And it's the worst kind of luck. It's enough luck to get you back on your feet and limping along again, not enough to make you comfortable. So that's Saturn for me has probably been the demon in my chart more than anything. You know, that level of accountability for an Aquarius is really hard to maneuver around. So yeah, and it connects up to my sun and my moon, so there's no wiggle room on that.
That's probably a good thing, because Saturn is the planet of boundaries and discipline, and it's kind of like the parent planet. So if it wasn't there, you may not have been as grounded, because that Aquarian energy is so strong. You know, we're kind of up in the clouds a lot. So that's how I like to look at Saturn. That's why I'm so fond of Saturn. I think Saturn is there to keep us, in line, especially the ones of us that have a hard time staying in line. As rebellious ones.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely one of those. Yeah. It's
I was looking in your,
sorry, John, go.
Your Volcanus is opposition the Venus in your 8th house. You have a Cancer, Volcanus, opposition.
Well, you want to tell us about Volcanus and how that might express?
I think you could explain it better. I will try, though. Volcanus being, the forge, kind of puts you in the fire. To me, that would be your manifestation, your work to make the spiritual valuable and worthy in the material world.
Yeah.
So that opposition, not sure how that fits with the opposition with the 8th house, but I think that drive is like, again, the upper house is going out, the lower house is self. It's like going out into the world through your relationships, like you said, learning, and then bringing that back to the forge and turning it into something that manifests, like tangible, not just woo.
Yeah, tangible.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Then I think that's what that Saturn's there for too, is to ground everything and bring everything back to a way that's useful to other people. In a way, it feels like a really a hybrid version of Sagittarius. I think I've always moved through my life, and I've always moved very quickly, and I've always cut all my connections off when I move from one place to another. But I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about people. I think I've learned a lot about myself. I think in my own life, I've always been the observer, although I've been center stage at key points. And I've always, what's kept me in place has always been relationships with other people. And when I don't feel, it's like the Indians, they have that saying that there's no medicine here, or the medicine's gone from this area, and they pack up sticks and they move on. And I think that's what it feels like. But I think that Vulcan that you're talking about is, I've reached a stage in my life, and here we are doing this, where you gather up all of that experience and you try to make something meaningful and useful out of it and give it to other people in a way that's going to help them without trying to help people at the same time. I think it's about probably Vulcan in the respect that you're actually just building tools. I feel like I'm building tools for other people to use. I don't tell people how to do their astrology. I don't tell them what works, things like that. It's all experiential. 50% of astrology for me is super personal. Otherwise, we'd all do exactly the same kind of astrology. I'm just trying to build tools that other people can use so they can go away and find meaning in their own experiences. And that'll be a super personal process. So I think you're absolutely right in that regard. Sorry?
Well, looking at the 7th house, if I read Neptune, Jupiter up into Mars, it's like Neptune, go deep, have the expansion, move on. like you said.
Yeah. But I think there's a set of ethics involved as well in that whole experience too. And I think it probably being the Sagittarius too, for me, there's always been a bigger goal. I've been I'm married now, which I never thought I'd be. I've been with the same amazing woman for 15 years now, which I never thought I'd have. I never thought I'd have that experience. So, and that tells me a lot about, you know, how life changes and how our needs change and how we evolve, and how, you know, we live life in levels. So, you know, I've reached a different place and it's all a whole new shooting match from there. And I think that seventh house stuff that's always had me moving on is probably what's keeping me here now, you know. And being in this group, she's a Sagittarius. So, I mean, she obviously ticks all those boxes, you know, she knows what she's doing in that house. I think, but with that Vulcan and what Rowan said about that, really interesting way of looking at Chiron, actually. I think those pieces fit together. I think you hit the nail on the head there, John. You know, and I think, like I said, I've never had a career that's felt meaningful to me. But when I even just get a response on, well, like you said, you know, how esoteric astrology really connects with you more than anything. I feel fulfilled that I've at least been able to nudge somebody in a direction where they've found something that's given more meaning to, you know, to their own journey and stuff like that. So that for me feels like a career. Just that having those little moments, you know, again and again, that's really important to me. So I think you're right in what you're saying. And I think that Chiron expresses as building tools for other people to have experiences with and find meaning. If that answers your question. Yeah. I don't know, am I an easy or a tough client to work with?
Well, I think, you know, you are the teacher, so we're trying to make you proud
today. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's that fourth house that we see Pluto at 29 degrees. You know, that 29 degrees, as we all know, is the anaretic degree. It's the critical degree. So, I mean, the fourth house is the house of home and, you know, roots and so forth. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier, you know, that you grew up kind of with all the books and everything. So, you know, Pluto doesn't always have to be bad energy. It can just be like, you know, in the tarot, Pluto is related to the Tower card. So, you know, things have to, what am I trying to say? Things have to break down before they can build up sometimes. So I'm curious how that may have manifested. It is retrograde. So, you know, but being in the fourth house, I'm wondering if, you know, you had some issues, you know, in your younger years, which, I mean, I'm not wondering that because I kind of know that you did. So it's hard, you know what I mean? So it's, and I can see that right there. In the fourth house manifesting. I also see in your fifth house, you know, you've got Uranus and that's sitting over there in Libra. It is retrograde, which is kind of good. So that kind of mutes the energy a little bit, but that's the planet of rebellion. And, you know, it's very close to that fourth house. But it is in the fifth house. And, you know, the fifth house is the house of, you know, children, romance, creativity, all of that good stuff. So that, and it's in Libra, which is pretty cool because, you know, I'm a Libra and, you know, Uranus is in my first house and the fifth house is the house of creativity. You know, we do a lot of creative projects and Uranus being the planet of, you know, it's just, it's unconventional, I guess. And what we do really is unconventional. You know, it's not, this isn't mainstream. This is pretty specialized. So it, you know, Uranus sitting right there kind of makes perfect sense to me as well. So that's why I'm kind of going a little slower because I already know a lot about you. So I was trying not to, but I can see it all in your chart, which is really, really neat. You know,
I didn't have a good home life growing up. I was told from a young age it was not my house. I wasn't welcome there. So I was raised by a solo mother who had no maternal instincts, which, you know, like I said, we're all the best versions of ourselves. We know how to be at a given time. So that was, I think, probably more than anything, that's what moved me out of home and set me on the road. I guess doing, living the way that I lived and doing the things that I did. and our relationship's been really, really difficult. But I think we've kind of turned a full circle now anyway. But I think it's probably now, probably more the last 3 or 4 years, rather than more than anything. The home I'm in now actually feels like a home. I've never felt that anywhere that I've lived as home. When I dream at night, I'm never home. I'm always lost. So I don't think I ever had a home center. And you know, and I think that Pluto reflects that. So that's been a big part of, I think, my developmental journey more than anything. That fifth house, creativity's always been my escape. Probably my first career more than anything was fine arts. I was an exhibiting artist in New Zealand. When I got out of high school, I was an art major. So, you know, I toyed with the idea of going into design. I was a painter. Sculptor. I did a lot of sculpting as well. And then the whole digital art revolution happened, and then I sort of got swept up in that. So I've been, even graphic design, web design, all that stuff, I've been involved in it, you know, and that's something that's always been there too. So I'm always excited by new stuff when it comes out, new technology and things like that. So I think that's probably how that Uranus is expressing in the fifth house.
Yeah, that's definitely that Aquarius sun too, because we know that, you know, Aquarius is technology and innovation and all that good stuff. And sitting so close to that North Node, I mean, you had, like Brandy said, I mean, and it's in an eclipse. I mean, it's all fated. I mean, it's destiny is what I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything that you keep saying, you know, like you were an artist and you do this and you did this and you did this. I mean, the more that you talk, the more that we can see it developing in your chart, you know, because I mean, that is unconventional, and the fifth house rules creativity and art, and you have Uranus sitting right there and in Libra. So as we know, Libra is the, you know, the balanced sign of balance, partnerships, working with other people. I don't know.
It's probably more the opposite in some ways. I think most things I'm pretty fast and loose with. I don't stress about that, but design and creative process and things like that, I'm really strict about. Layout, all that sort of stuff when I work, and I'm really hypercritical about that. That's something that I remember had a website that I was working on. We had an incredible amount of traffic going, but it was me and an ex. And I think she was decided she wanted to work on the design side of things. And that lasted for about 3 days before it became impossible. I was just impossible to work with. You know, I think one of the things about Aquarius, and I see it through Aquarians I meet all the time, we learn new things not to master them, but to understand the tools that are used to produce those results. And once we know how to use the tools, we lose interest in the form. Then we take those tools and we move somewhere else. You know what I mean? So I think that's really what that is too. I think I've done all these different careers, and I think even in the work I'm doing now, there's elements of everything I've ever done is in this. You know what I mean? And that's how astrology, I think, works anyway. We become so much more enriched as astrologers through life experience. You know. Yeah.
You said something a little while ago about your job. Did you say you never had a career that you liked, or never had a career that you, what did you say a little while back?
The whole concept of career never really worked for me. I could not imagine. I see people, they'll go and again, I saw this last night, you know, this by no means is this a criticism to other people. I'm just not wired this way. I can't for the life of me see why you want to be in one place or doing one thing for so long when you just get this one life to live. It seems crazy to me. It seems insane to me. And there's a conventional model that we're all given. And I'm just talking pure Aquarius when I say that, and I can hear it in everything that I'm saying. But there's this conventional model we're all presented with when we're kids. It starts in school. It starts with our parents and our family, you know, the way they live and the people who are around us. It's talking about, you know, you go to school, you learn stuff, you get a job, you turn it into a career, you do that for a long time. Somewhere in between there, you meet somebody nice and you settle down, you have kids, and then, you know, you leave that job, or you're forced to leave through retirement or whatever, and then you die. And that, to me, it feels like somebody's just explained a movie with all the spoilers. What's the point of watching it after that? You know how that movie ends. Why live it? Why do it? You know, and there's so many people who are doing it, and that they're enjoying it, and it's meaningful for them, and that's good to them. You know, I'm probably more indie in my movie choices. I want something different. You know, I don't want a predictable plot, you know, that produces a predictable outcome. So it doesn't mean I necessarily enjoy the plot I'm living right now from every moment. And the career has been such a central part to what everybody do with their lives, you know, that I just never felt the need to do that for my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know,
you're
sorry, John.
No, I'm sorry. I stepped over Brandy. She was saying something.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I thought. Oh, so a friend of mine in esoterics, she talks about Aquarian architects, and your chart to me just screams that. And Aquarian architects are here to help bust the Piscean structure by building architecture for the new age that's going to take at least 2,000 years to fully come through, right? So it's like you're here and your focus is to create this thing that's going to be coming. So anyway, your chart to me really speaks to that. One of the Aquarian architects, you're helping build the structure that's going to help people move forward and shift into this next thing. That's why things are so loose, because you're not in the old game. You're in a new world. You're like, you got 1 foot in the new world and you got 1 foot where we are now, and you're a bridge to that, which is any person that's helping bust the paradigm or build new structures for consciousness to land into is an architect, is Aquarian architect. So I just see like your chart screams that. And anyway,
I 100%
Totally.
agree with that.
Totally.
And I feel like the way we're living and the way we're doing things has got a timer on it, and that time is running out. And I think now, with everything that's happening in the world right now, we're closer than we've ever been to the end of this. And I'm more excited than I've ever been. And I've been saying this in groups and chats we've been having before. Look, if anarchy's on the horizon, then let's get to it. I'm ready for it. Because things can't go the way they keep going. I mean, I see the world, I see the disparity in wealth, I see this increasing. My wife still works in human services. They're spending $78,000 a day just dealing with homelessness in their area. You know,
psychology, physiology, all those systems are outdated and have
they're
to be
all collapsing, and everything's been swallowed up. You know, and then we're talking about middle class families that have both parents working, sleeping in cars because they can't afford to rent anymore, and they're thrown money by the government to help sort them out. That's their problem, and these are all band-aids. That's why I can't still work in the human services industry. So we're on the cusp of change, and there's only a small handful of people who are holding on to the old ways and stopping us moving forward. And it feels like, especially with you know, Pluto going into Aquarius, it feels like everything's just about to take that next step, and I'm ready for it. I'm glad I stuck around for as long as I did. I think I lived pretty recklessly when I was young, and I'm glad I'm here to see this happen. It's I don't think there's ever been a more interesting time to be alive, at least not in the modern world.
Have you heard of Bruce Lipton before?
No, I haven't.
I believe biology.
Yes.
Look up Bruce Lipton and the caterpillar. It is a great example of what's happening, because the caterpillar is falling apart, and the people that are associated with that are in panic. When there's imaginal cells, which is probably everybody present on here, that is imagining a new way, which is called the butterfly. It looks like it's going to be a death, but it's transformation. Bruce Lipton and the caterpillar. Okay. It's a great video.
I'll check it out. Writing it down. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. And I think probably for a big part of my life, especially the early part of it, that's why I was so directionless, because I don't think, you know, the environments that I was around and the role models that I had and all of those things, there was nothing really for me to hold on to, I think. And it all felt like, I felt like I was running through life as quickly as possible to try and get to this part. So, you know, and I feel like it's here now, you know. So yeah, I would totally agree with that insight. I think you're 100% on the money there. Sounds good too. I could put that on a business card. Damian McKinnon, Aquarian architect.
There you go.
It'll get me in some rooms. It'll get me thrown out of others, I'm sure. But yeah, hey, I don't care.
All right. It looks like Sandra joined us, I think.
Yeah, there she is. Hey, Sandra.
Hey, Sandra. What's up?
I seem to have woken up in a completely different world because I thought we were reading a different part and I thought it was at a different
So
time.
did we.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm a little bit confused right now.
Welcome. We are looking at
Thank
Damian's
you.
chart because we weren't able to get in contact with Antoinette. So we are going to hope that she is okay and reschedule her for another time. So Damian put himself up. So here we are.
Excellent. So am I like an hour late or have you just started?
We started around 8:30, so you're not too late. You can feel free to jump in, and if anything jumps out at you, just now's a good time to say it.
Let me think into the chart first though. I haven't I thought we might have been coming to the end of it, so I didn't want to jump in. So yeah. It's a pretty interesting chart, not surprisingly. Damian. There's a lot going on there. I'm particularly drawn to this Grand Trine that touches on your Taurus rising. It's like, okay, so you need that part of you that comes across as grounded and calm and all those lovely Taurian things is one of your powers, and it interesting that it leads to your Mercury in Aquarius, that detached thinking. Because I always think of Taurus as attached, like you like attachment parenting, you feel like would come under Taurus, right? Attached to the world around it, and actually that is also quite an Aquarian thing, isn't it? So yeah, that sort of level of attachment and detachment at the same time, so you can look at things and understand them, but not necessarily have to be fully invested emotionally in them. And obviously, potentially that's where your flow happens, is not to be emotionally invested, which is, if I remember correctly, I'm just looking for your moon. Yeah, you've got a Leo moon. So I guess that's a lesson in this life, is that your flow is not when you're looking for that emotional validation. And then you've got your Pluto in your fourth house in Virgo. So, the flow there being, and that's Pluto in retrograde. So the inner detail, sorting out that inner detail for transfer, and that's where your transformation is available. And I feel like that moon in Leo has sort of jars against all of this beautiful flow. It's like, if you can stay in that flow, life works perfectly, because you've got the groundedness, you've got the analytical capacities, you've got transformation right there, but it's not necessarily a big deal like Leo wants it to be. It's and it doesn't need big validation like your Leo moon wants. Because and I kind of get what John was saying there with the Aquarian architect, is because maybe that validation isn't even in this lifetime. you know, it's bigger than you, and it's kind of that Taurus rising is like, you know, the keeping it grounded, the keep on going, keep on moving it forward, even if you can't see where it's going to. Um,
Super
mm.
accurate. Yeah, I think a lot of what we've talked about before, you've come at it from a different angle, but it ties into that. And one thing I said earlier, I think every stupid thing I ever did in the early part of my life was connected to that Leo moon. So, yeah, so that's definitely played out that way. And what you're saying sounds correct too. In terms of the parenting model there, I think I'm the sort of parent who will let a child fall over. It's better for them to fall over rather than stop them from ever hitting the ground. You know, you only have to fall a couple of times. As long as they don't hurt, really aren't in danger, then, you know, falling over is a totally valid experience. So,
and you know, taking a risk is a really important way to learn, like, you know, and failing, you know, at something that you were totally sure was the way forward is a beautiful space to really, yeah, to understand things from a different level and move forward.
Catastrophic. Yeah.
And I love what you said. I think just as I came in, you were talking about how you feel it's a very Aquarian thing, that you're not necessarily here to master things. You're here to write things to the full experience that you came here to have with it, and then move to the next thing or bring that to to apply it in something different. And I very much see that in my son, who we all know is also Aquarius. That is like a that's like the core essence of what he does, and it stood out to me from a very early age. And you know what? I kind of think, like, you know, the Aquarian the Aquarian architects, like, you know, that is a basis of potentially how humanity is moving forward, because we've been taught that we need to stick with things to the end, and everything that we're conditioned to believe says that, you know, if you take something, you finish it right to the end, that's the sense of achievement. The sense of achievement is completing it. And, you know, I've just sat back with that concept and observed the Aquarian in my life not doing that, and getting so much fulfillment from not doing that. And I can see how others of us who do really try to stick it out to the end, when all of the joy is gone, all the inspiration is gone, that we actually, you know, let ourselves down because we're not moving on to that next stream of consciousness that's coming through, because we're still trying to play with this thing that's already dead in the water. So yeah, that futuristic Aquarian energy is definitely an important thing to really ground in with your Taurus, because it's really valid for the future that we're creating.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice that we're architects now instead of anarchists.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You know, agitators, rabble rousers, troublemakers.
Yeah.
You know,
Creators.
I like this architect concept. I'm gonna hold on to that for as long as I can write it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see you've got is that a quincunx from your Uranus to your MC?
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that's in Libra. And so a bit of being erratic.
Yeah.
And that interfering with you know, your goals and what you're putting out there in the world, which, you know, again, with your Taurus rising, that's not what comes across at all. So that's obviously an internal processing.
It's interesting.
And in your fifth house, so you're in your creativity, and so you know, potentially being interested in way too many things, or even just taking on other people's perspectives when it comes to the creativity that you're trying to create and put out there into the world. It's and maybe it's like there's, you know, that's a significant part to what you put out in the world, and because the Uranus is there, maybe the freedom is in you know, the Libra is the scale, so it's you and they, you know, and so it's the freedom that is achieved through the merging, through the bringing of the balance of those two, you and other, in the creative process. I think I just caught as well there that didn't go too well in the past. And which will be, you know, where that is rubbing against the wrong way, because it is part of what you're here to put out into the world. But obviously, you know, it doesn't mean it's going to work with everyone, because that's a learning process too, is finding the right people to achieve harmony, and in that harmony is freedom and excitement, and, you know, bringing creativity to whole new levels.
Sounds correct. Yeah. Oh gosh, what an interesting process that was. I thought I actually, yeah, no, it was really, really wonderful. Completely unexpected too. It's the last thing I thought was going to happen today. So thanks for being kind like you always are.
Was there, because I missed so much of it, was there anything like that was unexpected for you?
Quick,
the whole thing was unexpected.
Yeah, the interesting thing was, I think you put your finger on some of other things that were talked about, but they manifested in different areas of the chart. So just for anybody watching our YouTube channel as well, Sandra does not have an alcohol problem. That is not hooch. She's drinking, that's tea. So we are not advocating alcohol tea, or you know, addiction or anything like that. That is completely healthy.
Sandra doesn't actually even drink alcohol.
I just thought I'd put that out there because it's so natural the way you do it. I thought, yeah, okay.
It looks like you're drinking a 40.
That's it, you know. It does.
This is actually a reuse.
Like a Colt 45, you know what I mean?
She's got a big still out there in the barn, you know, where they make this stuff. So sour mash.
It's so much more boring. It's so much more boring than that. This is a milk bottle that I reuse.
Okay.
Awesome.
I just thought we needed that disclaimer because that bottle's been coming up a few times now. Yeah. For our younger audience members out there, you know, healthy living. We're Gen X. We make no apologies.
That's right.
If it was alcohol, we'd 100% support her anyway. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. We're just saying it's not.
We're just telling you it's not, you know, in case YouTube, somebody puts in a claim or, you know, some sort of dispute or something. Definitely not made for children content. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I really liked what Rowan said about Chiron, though. I think I'm going to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take some time and really do some research into her words, and because I'm very interested in Chiron as well. I think you can look at the placement of the Chiron on the chart and really learn a lot about a person. So. Or that's how I feel, you know, because I can see where mine is and I can see how it plays out in my life. And then now with what she said, you know, and how the connection that she made with the mythological, you know, gosh, that was just brilliant. And so I really like that. I really, and you know, the Chiron really does jump out, even though you have that stellium over there, and even though you do have the sun and the North Node, you know, at the top of the chart, you know, that Chiron being right there in Aries, it does jump out at you. So, yeah, I think that was really neat.
Yeah, no, that was interesting too. Looking at Chiron as the teacher rather than the injury. So
definitely, yes.
And
Yeah,
just the
and
teacher and
being
the purity of the role of the teacher, not learning through pain, but teaching others, So
right. Yeah, not for yourself, but for others. Like you said, he could heal everyone else, but he couldn't heal himself, and that was the main that was kind of the moral of the story. And hopefully we're all healing each other. You may not be healing yourself, you may be healing through these processes that we all do together. And that goes back to your seventh house right there, which is the house of relationships. And that Neptune pushing everything up is really cool because, like I said, to me, that just represents the mystical. It's kind of like the line between reality and like this dimension and that dimension, kind of like John was talking about. Some of us are gonna, some of us are in the 3D and some of us are in the 5D. And that's just the way it is. That's just how the programming is being run. And make no mistake, this is a program. We are all in it. We all have our parts to play. That's why they tell you to act right, son, because we're all acting. So yeah, it's pretty neat to be able to look at these charts and really look at how people are wired. It And yours is pretty literal, just like every single one that we look at. And every time that we finish doing one of these, it's so mind blowing because it's all right there, and this is literally your life map. This is the blueprint. This is your default settings. We do evolve past this, we do, we go through a progression. So we do evolve as humans, but it's nice to be able to look and see kind of where you started. And like you mentioned in the podcast that you did that I listened to this morning, which was so awesome. You guys have to check it out. It was amazing. You might want to bring your tissue, believe it or not. It was so moving. But all of you can see all of that in the chart. Now that, again, like I said, I kind of know a lot about you anyway, because we do get to talk a lot, but it all makes sense when you can actually look at the chart. I mean, I know I keep saying that, but it's so cool. And I wish everybody would learn astrology from Damian. Because
like
you are a good teacher. I mean, you're a great teacher. You're a great motivator. That Saturn in the 12th house, that's a very, like you said, it's a bucket chart. So it's kind of the handle in your life. Saturn, even though you've got that rebellious Aquarian energy, that Saturn has always been there to just kind of keep you grounded and kind of keep you from going too far outside of the realm of the boundaries or the rings or whatever, however you're going to look at it. So yeah, so the Chiron and the Saturn, the stellium jumps out, but those two also jump out a lot as well to me. So I think it's super neat.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you for all that you do.
You're welcome. Wow. Thanks, everybody. That was awesome. It's nice to have it done for yourself, actually. We've been doing these for a while, too. So if you haven't had your chart done yet, I think actually me and Michael are probably the two big offenders here anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was nice to have this opportunity today. So today was sort of a gift in disguise more than anything. Yeah.
Well, it's just this is another example of Damian pushing me right on out of my comfort zone, which works really well for me. Like we were talking about earlier with that Libra
did a great
energy.
Job. Really good.
He's just like, oh yeah. And so, which is really cool. And that goes back to that teacher energy that you have, that Mercury in Aquarius and that sun up there, that archetype, that builder energy. You're building things, and you're doing it with us. And so that's super cool. So I appreciate that.
That's my privilege.
I was a little nervous.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous, obviously. So, I mean,
good job.
But other than that was cool. And Sandra's smiling because I tell her all the time, well, Damian's pushing me out of my comfort zone again.
Well, you
Does
didn't
anybody
look
else have
nervous.
anything? Oh, I
Sorry,
didn't look
Brandy.
nervous. Oh, that's that Libra. That's that Libra. Thank you, Brandy, because I felt like I was about to come out of my
She's
skin,
like a
really.
duck. Her feet are just flapping around underneath the table right now.
Yeah, you
So
can't see what's
can't see them.
underneath. I look very calm. I'm just on the water, but underneath I'm like, but anyway, thank you. That's good to know because I don't ever want to look nervous. I always want to look like I've got it together, you know. That's that Libra. That's that double Libra, which works out really well because that's, you know, your rising sign is how, like his Taurus is how people perceive him. That's the mask. So I'm able to go out and look like I've got my shit together most of the time. And I do usually at this age. Fortunately, I've learned to keep it together. But all right, anybody else have anything to say?
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Wonderful reading. I'm going to stick a pin in it. Here we go. Thanks, everyone.